First of all, full disclosure, this is a vanity project, not instigated by any great public clamor. At the age of 82, I'd like to get down the facts of my career and life as I remember them, which is not necessarily the truth, but reality as refracted through the prism of memory.
I was born in Brooklyn in 1932, the third child of Herman and Henrietta Walden. The origins of the family name are lost in the forests of the northern Pale of Settlement, and my parents met in New York, both having left Poland at the end of the 19th century. I was graduated from PS 197, had my bar mitzvah at Temple Havat Shalom, went to summer camps, graduated Cunningham Junior High School, and then James Madison High School, in the same class as Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I took piano lessons and developed a passable, popular technique, as we called it, and started clarinet lessons.
I attended New York University for 1 year and then transferred to Queens College. At this time, my family had moved to West 86th Street in Manhattan, so I added modern dance study with Merce Cunningham to my schedule. I performed in the Varsity Show and was seen by a talent scout from the New York Theater Guild, and so I spent the summer as an apprentice at the Westport Country Playhouse.
Yes, that's me on the left, in full body makeup, playing a Nubian slave. I also met Barbara Dolgen, Grandma Bobby, in a modern dance class, and we married in 1955. In which year I was drafted and sent to Europe. And Bobby joined me in Berlin, my first duty post, and eventually we moved to Stuttgart, where I was clarinetist with the 7th Army Symphony Orchestra. Yes, there was a symphony orchestra in the United States Army back then. And Grandma sang and danced on the German stage and TV. I had started composition studies with Ben Weber in New York, and my first orchestral piece, Passacaglia for Chamber Orchestra, was conducted by Henry Lewis with the Army Orchestra.
Upon our return to the States in 1957, I supported us by working as an accompanist at all the modern dance studios in New York and as musical assistant to Martha Graham, Jose Limon, and Jerome Robbins.
In 1959, our first child, Matthew, was born, and I started teaching music for dance at Juilliard. I also taught at the State University at Purchase, Sarah Lawrence College, and the Lincoln Center Institute. I was one of the founders of the Contemporary Chamber Ensemble and took part as clarinetist in groundbreaking performances of Schoenberg's Pierrot Lunaire. In 1961, our second son, Joshua, was born. I wrote Love's Proper Exercise for Jan de Gaetani, whom I had met along with Gilbert Kalish at the Pierrot rehearsals. It was the first of 5 pieces I was to write for her.
Could make a small boy dizzy, but I hung on like this. Such waltzing was not easy.
I became active as a clarinetist in New York, recording, touring as soloist with Robert Shaw, and playing in the Radio City Music Hall Orchestra, subbing at the Philharmonic and at the Met Opera. I also played piano at the Circus Bar, a strip club in the Bronx. At a summer theater, I met Jacques Levy, and through him, joined the Open Theater and helped create The Serpent and Mutation Show. With Jacques directing, I wrote the incidental music for the off-Broadway production Scuba Dooba, starring Jerry Orbach and Judd Hirsch.
When you're on the beach at Brighton, Provincetown, or Penn, and you see 2 hippie flippers slip into the sea, it's the Scuba Dooba man doing what he do. 1, 2, 3.
Later, in 1967, Peter Schickley, Robert Dennis, and I formed The Open Window. After producing an album for Vanguard and playing various engagements, in 1969 we wrote the score for O Calcutta. Commissioned by the Louisville Symphony to write 3 views from The Open Window, and my part was called Circus, which we performed and recorded with the Louisville under George Mester, and later performed with the orchestras of Chicago under Seiji Ozawa and Cincinnati under Louis Lane.
Goodbye, folks. Now it's time to go. Tell your friends and neighbors how you liked our show. Tell them to come to the circus. It's fun at the circus. It's not far to the circus. When you are the circus.
In 1969, I met George Tabori, and I wrote the music for Pinkville, first in New York, starring Michael Douglas and Raul Julia, and then in Berlin.
Dear Mom, I'm in Vietnam. Tell Dad I'm not yet dead. This morning at 8:45, Buddy Wilson stepped on a mine. You remember him? Well, it dismembered him.
Margot Sappington, the choreographer of O Calcutta, needed a score for her ballet Wee Whis for the Joffrey, which I composed. Then came the songs for Robert Coover's The Kid at the American Place Theater.
When the night is a-comin' and my body tells me that I'm sore and weary, sitting saddle pushing cattle.
The dramatic concert Some Changes, after texts by June Jordan, for Jan de Gaetani and myself. In this recording, the clarinet is played by Stanley Hasty.
Little yellow looked at the banana tree, he looked at the moon, and he heard a banana creep above beneath the moon. And he sat on the ground and fell asleep then.
Svengali with Tom O'Horgan was unproduced. And then the entire evening fandangle for the New York State Arts Council.
Little Mary Bell, little Mary Bell.
In 1975, I joined George Tabori in Bremen, and, first of all, we produced Sigmund's Freude, investigating the links between therapy and theater. Secondly, I wrote the score for David Newman's film The Crazy American Girl, which I recorded in Paris.
Floating down on a lonely river of the tears I cried. River is flowing inside me, mighty river pouring toward the tide. Goodbye, lonely river, I'm crossing to the other side. Got myself together, high and mighty.
And thirdly, for the Arena Theater in Washington, I wrote a new score for the Bertolt Brecht The Caucasian Chalk Circle, in which I used the strange vocal techniques of Caucasian folk music. In 1979, Jacques Levy and I wrote Back Country.
Don't say tomorrow when I'm hurting today, living with sorrow ain't a price I can pay. Finding his fun and a pasture to roam while I get none of his sunshine, sitting here at home.
Well, Backcountry devastatingly died in Boston on the way to Broadway, so I fled New York and went to Munich, where I took part as performer in Tabori's Improvisations on Shylock at the Munich Hammerspiele. There is a wonderful book about this production. Jacques had teamed up with Bruce J. Friedman on Turtlenecks and ensnared Paul Desmond to play on the score, which I eagerly supplied. By the way, this was another play that didn't make it to New York. project proved to be intensely creative, and besides Shylock, led to the productions of Der Untergang der Titanic, The Sinking of the Titanic, by Hans Magnus Enzensberger, Tabori's My Mother's Courage, Hamlet, a solo concert at the Kammerspiele, 2 radio plays, and the film Frohes Fest, Happy Holiday, by Tabori for the TV channel ZDF, in which Bobby and I also acted as Mary and Joseph, if you can believe that. In this clip, the 5 crazy women are dancing in the English gardens in Munich. A second film in this time was Vadim Glovna's Desperado City, in which I appeared and which won the Camera d'Or at Cannes.
I'm supposedly older and wiser, no longer a colder. Please tell me why I still get that jolt every morning in my mirror when I see time's been creeping upon me.
We returned to the States, where I wrote Entertainments for tuba and 3 horns. Songs and Dances for cello and piano for Joel Krosnick and Gilbert Kalish. And we started work on Bein' Here Tonight, a theater piece that Bobby and I developed along with other actors, dealing with homelessness in New York, and which we performed in New York and in Vienna.
Now it may not be easy, and it may not be right, but we each got a reason for being here tonight. You might believe it just happened without knowing why, or it's just dumb luck or the roll of the die. But deep down inside you, you cannot deny that it may not be easy and it may not be right, but we each got a reason for being here tonight.
The Tabori group was developing Der Voyeur, the Voyeur, for the Berliner Festwochen, and I had the chance to record my score with the Rias Big Band. What you'll hear now is the walking song about getting out on the street and demonstrating.
Moses ging und sprach zum Berg und meinte es von Herzen.
Meine Seele ist so leicht, o Busch, doch meine Füße schmerzen.
In 1983, George once again seduced me into acting in his Jubileum, or Jubilee, for the Bochum Theater, and that production went on to receive the Mülheim Award as the German Play of the Year. And Jacques and I had received a commission from Jan de Gaetani and Gil Kalish to write a piece for them, which resulted in the song group Three Ladies, released on CD by Bridge Records.
Mama, I cried, and she came, of course, and took my hand in the dark. I feel its touch even now, its weight, size, its fullness, not like a lady's. Spindly fingers finely wrought, but ample like a sailor's.
With Tabori directing, I set the Gertrude Stein libretto, Dr. Faustus Lights the Lights, which was produced in Cologne and later in New York. I was invited as guest composer to the Eastman School in Rochester, where my double sonata, and Memini Mortuarum were performed. In 1985, Manfred Karger and I wrote the musical Clara, done in Bochum, on TV, and in Flemish in Ghent, Belgium. And this is the finale about how wonderful things could have been if, in a fantasy, if only the Nazis had been stopped by the Germans themselves. After Auschwitz, my symphonic extrapolation of themes from the score I had written for My Mother's Courage received its first of several performances at the Eastman School under Sidney Hodkinson, and later, under my direction, with the Brandenburg Philharmonic in Potsdam in Germany and the Budapest Chamber Orchestra in Cividale, Italy. I returned to Brooklyn for Martha Clark's Endangered Species at BAM, together with Richard Peasley, a piece with an elephant, horses, a monkey, and acrobats. In 1985, I wrote a new score for Die Bettleroper, the Beggar's Opera, for the reopening of the Renaissance Theater in Berlin. And this is a silly song that's a takeoff on a Brecht Weil song.
Weißt du noch, den Puff von Wilma, als wir einen steigen ließen und uns auch was zeigen ließen? Jeder hatte seine Irma auf dem Schoß, den Puff von Wilma, und dann ging der Rock'n'Roll. Jeder hatte seine Irma auf dem Schoß, den Wilma.
I was commissioned by the Philadelphia Orchestra to write a work for the entire orchestra except for the strings. The piece that resulted was Invisible Cities, after the book by Italo Calvino, and it was conducted by Erich Leinsdorf. I wrote 2 biblical songs for Riri Grist to honor the 50th year of Queens College, where we had both met as students. And a series of productions in Vienna for Tabori and the Burg Theater. Once again, he talked me into acting in Jean-Claude Carrier's Zum zweiten Mal, for the second time, with Hannes Schikula at his theater Der Kreis, the Circle, in Vienna. The Hochschule der Künste, the Arts Conservatory in Berlin, asked me to write a musical for the test course Musical Show, and the result was Bahn frei, or Make Way, based on the children's picture book Struwwelpeter. This number is about the Berlin Wall.
Auf der Mauer, auf der Lauer sitzt die kleine Wanze. Seht doch nur die Wanze an, ah ja, wie die Wanze tanzen kann. Ah ja. Auf der Mauer, auf der Lauer sitzt die kleine Wanze. Hier ist es schön, denn man kann so weit sehen, oh ja. Auf der Mauer man kann auch gehen, kann sich drehen, wirklich schön. Ja, hier ist es schön, denn man kann so weit sehen, oh ja. Wie die Wanze tanzen kann, man kann auch gehen, kann sich drehen. Hier seht die Wanze tanzen, wie die Wanze tanzen kann. Vorwärts gleiten, Drehung zur Seiten und noch ein Schritt. Ist es nicht schlecht, das Ganze? Nicht schlecht für eine Wanze. Ja, man kann uns sehen, die jetzt bei diesem Mann. In diesen bösen Traum.
Following the success of this show, I was appointed professor at the Hochschule and founded the Department of Musical Theater, which I led for 15 years. And Bobby and I published a book, Life Upon the Wicked Stage, outlining our approach to that study. In 1994, we held a workshop at Lubimovka, near Moscow, and later workshops in Essen, Munich, Sarah Lawrence College in New York, and at the California Institute of the Arts. Jacques had been contacted by the Coconut Grove Playhouse in Florida, and we wrote Miami Lights, done at the Grove and later at Theater Works in Mountain View, California.
Soon I will be going, 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 going. Lights in Miami. But until I do, it's me and one. Like Miami light. Where will there for me? Shining in the heart of the city. Shining by the side of Miami. Like Miami light.
Another series of productions of various plays with Tabori and others followed in Vienna, Potsdam, Berlin, Munich, and for the Expo in Seville.
Mr. Abel said a prayer. Mr. King.
In 1997, I conducted performances of Walton's Façade and the Stravinsky L'Histoire du Soldat at Spectrum Concerts in the Philharmonie in Berlin. I also wrote the score for Café Mitte with Volker Ludwig at his Grips Theater in Berlin. And this is the title song from Café Mitte, about a cafe in the Mitte, which is a part of Berlin that is, in fact, in the middle.
Wenn es Nacht wird in Berlin und du weißt noch nicht, wohin der kleine Schritte ins Café Mitte, bist du nur noch unterwegs, geht dir alles auf den Keks, dann mach Visite im Café Mitte.
In Hamburg, Tabori and I did Delirium from a collection of texts assembled by Enzensberger. My opera, Liebster Vater, after Kafka's brief an den Vater, the letter to his father, was produced in Bremen, Weimar, and Berlin, and later in an English-language version in New York. In this aria, the father complains bitterly about his son.
Ich habe mein ganzes Leben lang schwer gearbeitet. Alles für meine Kinder, vor allem bin ich geopfert. Du hast den Folge dessen in Saus und Braus gelegt.
Maquettes for two pianos was commissioned and later recorded by Robert Levin and his wife, Yaffe. And this movement is called Por Chucho and is dedicated to the Cuban pianist Chucho Valdez. I fashioned an evening together with Sabrina Askasibar of my and Kurt Weill's music. We called it Liebste Kurt, which we performed throughout Germany and in New York.
Feel the west wind blow. Can you feel it?
Yes,
You can feel it, you can feel it.
Yes.
Up on the Oregon Trail.
On the Oregon Trail. On the Oregon Trail.
In 2002, my 70th year, my opera Bach's Letzte Oper, or Bach's Last Opera, which is absurd because he never wrote an opera, although commissioned by Den Danske Oper in Copenhagen, was premiered by the Opera House in Erfurt in Germany. And this is a duet between Bach and his first wife, Maria Barbara. My duo, Schma, for violin and cello, was recorded along with my horn trio, maquettes, and the piano similes by Spectrum Concerts Berlin and released on the American Classic series by Naxos. In 2006, I received the unlikely ASCAP Rhythm and Soul Award for the sampled use of O Calcutta in the hip-hop song One Thing for the film Hitch. See if you can hear O Calcutta in it. I can't. It was also used by Sofia Coppola in her film Somewhere. In 2006 also, I set Tabori's one-act play, Dogs, for the students at the Hochschule and retired from my professorship. In this clip, the three dogs are a pit bull, a German shepherd, and a poodle.
Wir drei allein ohne Fußböden, da ist ein Wald auf die Wiese, lupen auf die Wiese. Wir riechen und springen und rennen, wir drei allein. Wie in der wilden Urzeit, die stehen geblieben ist. Ohne Morgengrau, hier und jetzt, in den gnädigen Abend. In den gnädigen Abend, hier und jetzt, hier und jetzt, hier und jetzt.
Various chamber musics, mostly unperformed, followed, including the Fantasy Variation for Gilbert Kalish, for inclusion in the 13 Ways of Looking at the Goldberg. In 2011, my review musical, Butterfly Madam, was premiered in Palm Springs.
So, no more men for me. No more whining and striving to please. From now on, I shall hunt with a net, and when I get one, I'll set him mounted and counted and pierced with a pin in my collection.
And in 2014, I completed my musical version of Tabori's Goldberg Variations.
This is something new.
You have sung my song.
This is why there's you.
Why did we wait so long? This can't be wrong. Why was it bad? This thing called a kiss.
This and this and
Now
this.
we are man and woman.
Woman and man.
Well, it looks like Goldberg will be done in Germany next year. I'm delighted about that. And for now, I'm back here in Palm Springs, missing Bobby, who died some 2.5 years ago. I've just returned from 3 weeks in Berlin, celebrating the centenary of George Tabori's birth. And I felt the need to make this record for my grandchildren, Elijah, Eliza, Casey, and Kama. The story of a man who, although I can't do everything, I've done just about everything. Some of which I wish I'd done a lot better.
This recording, together with the English version of Life Upon the Wicked Stage, will be my testament, with the hope that sometime in the future, you grandchildren will derive some degree of pleasure from what I've left you.